Good morning. Hello. Good morning. Y'all are a wild bunch this morning. Everybody's amped up this morning. Okay. Nice and calm. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is Friday, June 14th. With that, if you are able, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. It is Flag Day. Thank you. So, just a brief announcement, if we may. We are having a little bit of technical difficulty with getting the online up and running for the YouTube. So, Alan, you may not see any questions right away. So, they may come all at once, or Martin is working on that feverishly. So, in case nobody worry that there are no questions coming right away. We do have a quorum with all 9 directors here this morning. This is a workshop, so we'll again abide by open meeting laws, and we will discuss and come to consensus to move things forward for a vote at the next governing board meeting. So with that, I'll move on to 2.01 for the approval of the May 17th minutes. If there are no objections, corrections, they will stand as written. Thank you. Karen. .01 is for upcoming political season. This is going to be postponed. Somewhere I had a note to myself, but it's going to be postponed to the September meeting when the board returns after the.
No, this is remarks. We're talking. 304 is.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm in the wrong one. Upcoming political season. We've had many emails and phone calls concerning the political signs going up in the community and their locations. So we wanted to touch base with everybody and let everybody know that it is not too early for the signs to be out and about. And RCSCW abides by the Arizona state mandate. The statute is 33-1808. We encourage everybody to go online and read that. The one issue is they may not be placed on RCSCW property. If for some reason you think it is on RCSCW property, we encourage you to notify our CC&R department. James Riley is happy to address that. His department will address that, and they will go out and look. One thing we do not want you to do is try and remove the sign yourself. That is not acceptable. Our own department will not do that. They will notify the campaign headquarters and have them come take the sign down. So if there are no questions, we'll move on. I should have told you this was going to be a quick meeting, and if I continue to bypass line items, it will be. So now, okay, with that, we'll move into 3.02, which is, this is kind of a really unique project that we're going to have coming in. It's Watching Carnivores. And I'm going to have Katie O'Grady come and talk about this briefly. We should have a slide come up. There we go.
All right,
Thank you, Katie.
Madam President, members of the board, community, appreciate this opportunity. We were approached by a PhD student named Claire Mooser, I believe it's pronounced, but she knows the area, very familiar with it, familiar with the coyotes and the bobcats that we've seen the last couple of years. And she's asked us to help with the educational component of her PhD project, which is to track coyote sightings, coyote interactions, bobcat interactions or sightings here in Sun City West and Sun City. Their goal is to kind of notice trends, track these interactions, and see if there's a way to reduce the negative interactions with humans and urban coyotes. If there's times of day or mating season that they notice in these trends. And so for our role, there's no cost to the association. She'll provide us with these posters, and we'll put those out in the community. She's got this QR code at the bottom that if you see one, you can scan it or bookmark it and just send her a text, hey, here's what I saw, here's when I saw it. And she'll have a website as well that you could track those. So look for in probably the August Rec Center News. We'll have a lot more publicity out on that. And in the next couple of weeks on our e-news as well. Her time frame is maybe a year, 12 months to get this tracking done. And then she's working with several pretty renowned organizations, the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy, Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project, Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center. So they're going to bring their resources to bear as well. We might have a community forum in one of the facilities where they come out, answer questions, talk about how to live peaceably with urban coyotes. And the end game ultimately is a documentary they're hoping to do based on these findings. They've done it before in California with bears in the swimming pools. So they track data for maybe a year and then put together a documentary if they can get funding for that at the end of it. So no big issue for us as an association other than helping with the posters and maybe a room or two. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Board, any questions for Katie on this? And any questions from the audience for Katie?
All right,
No?
thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate it. With that, we're going to move on to 3.03. It's a revised policy on 3.03, standing committees. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Jack Leary, as we have revised this multiple times, and we're going to go over our revisions, if you will, Jack.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, the changes that we've made since we last met is we have added section 2.12. Is this okay? And rather than putting the onus on the committee members or the selected, the committee member candidates, we've turned it around to put the onus on the committee chairperson who does the selection. So a chairperson shall elect committee members who have served no more than 3 consecutive years on that committee. So the onus is on the chairperson to know who has done what. We added back in 2.2 the word one. They shall serve a maximum of 3 consecutive years on any one governing board standing committee. And we kept in, but renumbered the paragraph that's now 2.2.1. That says any period of partial standing committee service during a 1-year period will count as a full year of service. And then paragraph 2.2.2 was struck. And then the only other change, I believe, is one below that. That was 2.2.3, and it's now 2.2.2. And that is the extent of the changes.
We'll open this up for discussion, directors. Director Rhodes?
Jack, I appreciate your work on this. The only question I have is, and I understand, and I think it's the correct thing to do, is to put the onus of responsibility on the committee chairperson to make the determination. Does this mean that someone could serve 3 years on BNF and then they could turn around and serve on another committee
If selected, yes.
if selected? That's it. So there's not necessarily a 3-year time frame, because at one time we had a 3-year time frame with 1 year off. Now we've actually eliminated that, and this is exclusively for 3 consecutive years, and then they have to, the chairman cannot select them the fourth time.
For the 4th year. So
I'm fine.
as of our last conversation, we decided the consensus was that it would be 3 consecutive years on a single committee. And then we also struck the paragraph that is numbered 2.2.2 here, which took out the stand-down period.
All right, that's good. Thank you. It's more palatable. Thank you.
Director Novello?
Thank you. I echo the appreciation, Jack, for going back and forth on the iterations. I think from where I sit, it's a step in the right direction. I think we're seeing record numbers of applicants for our committees, and that's a really great thing. So I think this is a step in the right direction to ensure we have some good turnover. Just for the record, I preferred this to say on any standing committee. I think that I'd like to encourage more of that. So just from where I sit, I don't know how the rest of the directors, we're here to achieve discussion and consensus. In paragraph, let's make sure I get the numbers right, because last meeting I was confused. 2.2, where it says any one governing board standing committee, just my opinion is I preferred it the original way without the word one. That's just my opinion. I would like to see more in the way of new blood.
Okay.
But again, it is a step in the right direction regardless, so thanks for that.
Oh, okay. Director Rhodes?
I guess I don't quite understand, Director Novello, because I thought this looked pretty clear that the person could serve as many, they could be appointed as many as 3 times. And that would be for charter clubs, any of the committees. So I guess I'm unclear. I don't understand what your point is.
Director Novello?
Thanks, Director Rhodes. Dick, I was thinking that the way I'm reading this is that you can serve on Budget and Finance, which is, by the way, the most fabulous committee. Right.
And I do agree with that.
No, all our committees are fabulous and work very hard, but you could serve 3 years on Budget and Finance and then immediately move to serve another several years on another committee. And I would just like to see there be more in the way of additional faces. That's just my view. So the way this reads is that you can serve on one and then move to another for up to 3 years. The original way would encourage the director to go out, the chairperson to go out and actually choose someone who has not served on a committee for 3 consecutive years. Just my view. That's the reason why. I hope that clarifies.
Director Leary, and then Schlemmer.
So then, Christine, what you're suggesting is a stand-down year. You'd like to see a stand-down year.
Although I would, in this suggestion, I'm just saying that my preference would be to remove that word one, that you inserted at the consensus direction, right? I understand. I'm not trying to go back and forth on you, but the word one says that I understand that we need to have more discussion going forward about the stand-down year. Although I think it's a good idea, I know that we need to have some more discussion in the future. But from my standpoint, I preferred the 2.2 wording to say any governing board standing committee.
So then what you're suggesting is they could serve 3 years on up to 3 committees.
Yes, any committee, any standing committee.
Any of the 5 standing committees.
Right. Any 3 years cumulatively, and then the onus would be on the chairperson to look for someone who has not.
Okay, so there are actually 2 variables here. One is, can I have quiet, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
There are 2 variables. One is the 3-year service, the number of committees on which a person can serve, and then the other variable is the stand down. So those are two different things.
Yes.
So
and-
what Director Novello is suggesting is remove the word one, which would limit to somebody to 3 years serving across any of the 5 committees, standing committees. Is that
Thank
correct?
you. That's correct. But for future discussion, perhaps would be what was originally 2.2.2, the stand down year. I know that that was a challenge in the way that it's worded, and I understand from a consensus view. Just expressing that I'd like to see the 1 removed in 2.2.
Thank you, Director Novello. Director Schlemmer?
Before I ask my question, I want to make sure I get a point of clarification. I think I'm struggling on the same thing. At the end of a mix of 3 years, either on one committee or any combination thereof, what happens? They would then go to another.
I think this guideline puts the onus on, it's not a guideline, it's a policy, excuse me. This policy puts the onus on the chairperson to select someone who has not served 3 years in a row. That's all.
Correct.
My comment is this. Originally, when the idea of changing this to eliminate the stand-down year and cap it at 3 years, but you could then move to another committee, I was actually supportive of that proposition. But in the couple of weeks since we've had that meeting, a couple of things have happened. One is I had my first opportunity to see the number of people who actually apply for committees because being my first year, I didn't get through that experience last year because it happens at the end of the prior board's term. And it is very mind-opening to see how many people are really, really interested in being involved in this community. And our role, I think, is to create those opportunities for folks who want to be involved. And the second component is that I did get quite a bit of feedback, some in support, but also a significant percentage saying, you guys really do need to open up more opportunity for more members of the community to have an opportunity to serve on committees and to make sure that we're opening that door wider. So I actually like what Director Novello is proposing in part, but what I would recommend is we actually go back to what we originally were looking at, which is that there is a 3-year cap, and after 3 years serving on one or any number of committees, 3-year limit for service, there is then a stand-down year. I think that does create the opportunity for us to have to seek out new volunteers, new interested members to fill the void that would occur by not being able to just move around committees with the same talent. So I'd actually like to see us go back and revisit that issue, and essentially I'm reverting back to the proposal that was back prior to 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Director Schlemmer. Director Hurley?
Yes. My objection last time, and it's the same objection I'm going to put forward today, is you're dealing with what happens to the people on the committee. My concern is you are tying the hands of future directors on who they can have on their committees. That's the problem. Limiting people is one thing, but telling a director that hasn't even been elected yet, you can't have this person on your committee, is not the right thing to do.
Director Hammond?
We've gone through this discussion quite often. The objective that this committee was trying to form was to get new people on committees. One of the biggest problems you had was people being on a committee longer than 3 years. Not the fact that they were going from one committee to the other. You've got chairpersons that are supposed to put people on the board. Don't tie their hands up with eliminating somebody that might be a really good worker for the community. They're only one member of maybe a 9-member committee. They're not going to have that much of a sway on it. This one gets a person off of the committee. That was your objective, was to get people off of the committee that have been there for a long time and to get new people on the committee. This accomplishes that. And it also has the chairperson of that committee to be able to pick whoever they want on a committee without tying their hands. And I think this bill is perfect. You got it. Don't mess with it. You've talked it over how many times? You finally came up with this consensus. I don't know why you're going back and rehashing it. You got a good working committee, a good policy.
Lisa?
Hold that thought 1 second, please, Tim. I want to ask the question that I think is really important. I know the chairpersons have been going through to look at their committee applications, and I would like to ask the chairpersons at this moment how many applicants they have received and been weeding through at this time. And I would like to start with Director Williams. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you already said she had properties. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, Karen, let me just go to Karen, our governing board executive assistant. How many people did we have applying for, how many applications came in? In general? It just, I'm sorry, no, total overall, 100 and,
Per committee?
no, overall. I know BNF, we saw 51 for BNF. We had 51 for BNF. Right? Okay. So. I mean, there's a lot of duplication. Right, across the board. So, but over 100 and something in all applicant? No, I would say it's more like 70 to 80. So I think that's a large number for us to look at across the board for applicants to consider. And that's just something for the chair people to look at. So Director Hurley.
Having this number of people want to be on committees is a fairly recent event. Just in the last 2 years have we had more people apply than we had committees. Prior to 2 years ago, we had the committee chairmen going out and trying to recruit people. So what you're seeing right now won't necessarily always be the same way. And again, I think tying the hands of a director on who he could have on his committee is not the right approach to take.
Director Piaskowski, we haven't heard from you.
Okay, so we have an abundance of volunteers the last 2 years. This is a policy that we can change. So in 3 years from now, if we find out that our volunteers are going down, then we can revisit this. Am I correct? And we can rethink the 3-year consecutive policy.
Director Leary.
I should point out here that should the number of applicants fall off below where they are now, there's nothing in here that says that we're limited to that list of people who apply. So the chair people are actually not restricted. They can go out and recruit should we end up with having fewer people than we actually need.
Director Novello.
Thank you. Since I opened the can of worms, I just want to say again, this is a step in the right direction. The existing proposal CO3 that we're looking at today that was redrafted version 5, I believe it says on the top. So I just want to acknowledge it is a step in the right direction. I would support it as is. I would like to see it enhanced in the future, but as I think we've been alluding, this is not the end of any discussion on any policy. None of these are final per se. I mean, they're final and they would take effect. But if we want to continue to iterate on this and improve, we may in the future. So I just wanted to put it out. I did open up the can of worms, if you will, because I'd like to see us go a little further. I'm just expressing my view. It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily amend this. But the more we can prompt more community involvement, more diversity, more encourage new faces on our committees, I would be really happy to see that continue. I do acknowledge, though, as Director Hurley is saying, we don't want to tie anyone's hands if we're in a position where we are at a minimum number of folks applying. I think, as Director Leary alluded, this doesn't seem to constrain chairperson from going out and encouraging more. So anyway, just wanted to acknowledge that we have a lot of room for growth. Whatever we do today, this is a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Thank you. And we do have several online questions, so I'm going to have Director Schlemmer read those before we move to make a motion
Okay.
either way for consensus.
Thank you, Madam President.
No motion.
Okay, the first comment is from Mary Gannett, 133113. Please word this policy to make certain people can't jump from one committee to another without taking a year off after 3 years. We can't have the same people over and over. They can move from one to another, but still need to take a year off after 3 years regardless. The second is from Dennis Horvath. Governing Board Committee, good morning, Governing Board. Committee members should and can serve 3 years on any committee, then take a year off. A stand-down year, new blood adds community involvement, which is paramount. It is the same for the Governing Board, 3 years and stand down for 1. Cynthia P., limiting the terms presents new members and ideas. You don't want one person to monopolize the committees. I'm trying to figure out what she's saying here. Yes, because I don't see a lot of people of color despite our community being more diverse. And then back to Mary Gannett again. If you allow people to move from one committee to another, you are prompting the good old boy network. People are frustrated that some of the committees won't step back to allow others on. And I believe those are all of the online comments.
Thank you, Director Schlemmer. If we have no other director comments, we'll move to audience. Oh, Director Leary.
Before we get consensus to move to the regular meeting, I would like to be sure that we have covered all of the discussion and objections so that we're not surprised at the regular meeting to have further discussion that should have happened here. I think we also have to get public comments.
I was headed to.
But I want to make sure that
Audience comments, but
I want to make sure that the board has,
Right.
that we've reached the end of our.
What we come to today will be what moves forward to the governing board for a vote.
Yes, and
Correct.
thank you.
Correct. So thank you we'll now go to audience comments. So you're at the mic. If you'll please give us your name and your rec card number. Thank you.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. Thank you, Madam President and Board. I'd just like to make the comment on what's proposed today. I do believe it's very good as it is proposed that, okay, limit it 3 years. I totally understand and agree with that. But do allow them to just go to another committee. And my belief for that is that they're doing nothing but getting more knowledge about our community so that perhaps in the future they would join the governing board and have that knowledge to help you with a stronger governing board. And with the committee chair being able to choose the people, if he or she decides that I want new people all the time, he or she has that ability to say, I'm not choosing any of my current team, I'm going to pick all new people. So with that being known, why have a year fallout? That should be up to the committee lead to do that. So I definitely like the way it is worded today, and I hope that you are able to follow through with that. The other comment I just wanted to make, which is sort of on the same line but not, it's actually regarding the governing board. I've always wondered why it is that there isn't some minimum requirement for the governing board for a person to be elected. It kind of befuddles me why people are not required torch and at least one other committee that they have served on, so they have a little bit more knowledge in going to the board. So just a suggestion, just something to think about there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And And just a reminder, if we can please just keep the comments to the subject at hand.
Nick Turner, 131829. I know that it's not 100% agreement between you because I've been listening to the discussions, but my feeling is that the board feels that there should be some term limits and that those term limits should be a 3-year maximum. And the open question is whether people should stand down after that 3 years and not be able to serve on another committee. Some other suggestions is that if after 1 year stand down and that person then applies for another committee or may be selected for another committee, can they go back to the same one? Or should they be forced to go to a different one? If you're concerned about lack of expertise, the chair of the committee not being allowed to select somebody who they think will be a good candidate because they have served 3 years, perhaps the policy should be that a minimum number of the committee should not have served more than 3 years. So if you've got a committee of 9 people, you can have 3 of them on there who have served 3 years or more, but that's the maximum that you can have on that committee. Everybody else should have served 3 years or less. And finally, maybe a sentence which says if there are insufficient number of suitable applicants, then somebody who has served 3 years is not term limited. So the chairman does have an option, if the chairman can demonstrate, perhaps privately, to the rest of the governing board that there are insufficient suitable candidates, that they can then select somebody who would otherwise have been term limited. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other audience comments? Director Hurley?
I just want to point out that the way we've run committees in the past is that the chairman is the head of that committee, and he appoints who what he wants. He can remove people, he can add people. He or she, excuse me, can add people. Each one of the directors that are chaired this year have taken that to remove people and to add other people, with the exception of Alan, because he's only been there for a couple of months. But every one of the chairmen has exercised that ability to be the head and one in charge of that committee. So I again state that if we're diminishing that role in any way in the future, that's not good policy.
Director Hurley?
No, Leary.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry. You know, I'm sorry, not to imply you're
Okay,
one and the
so-
same, but Director Larry?
Tim, how does this policy diminish the role of the chairperson? I don't understand.
If you have a policy that limits someone, a chairman, from choosing someone who's been on a committee 3 years or not, that diminishes the role of the chairman. What if you have a real stellar person, and I can name a couple of people, a couple of them are in the audience today, who are members of that committee? You would want to keep those people around. That's one person out of 9. The fact that you're not going to let that star stay on the committee, to me, is not good policy.
So do we have policy for the exception or policy for the whole?
This is policy for the exception. You're excluding people that have been on a committee for more than 3 years. This is the exception. To have a rule that says the chairman picks who he wants on that committee, that's the rule. This policy is an exception.
But your argument is removing a stellar person. That's the exception also.
No, Jack. A policy that says a person has to stand down after 3 years or can't be on a committee after 3 years, that is excluding that person. That is an exception. Allowing the chairman to pick and choose who he wants on his committee, regardless of where they've served, how long they've served, if they feel that they're the right person for that committee, that director should have the ability to put that person on the committee.
Then why do we have term limits for governing board directors?
Because we set policy. Committees don't. Committees just recommend. They have a much different level of authority when it comes to making things that govern the association. Apples and oranges.
I think we can agree to disagree.
I'd like to also point out, though, listening to this go back and forth as well, that while governing board directors have a stand-down year, there's an exception that when a governing board director completes their 3-year term and they go off, if in that next year the board loses a director, the sitting president has the capability to go to the board and bring a name forward, a past director who may have just come off. They did that. It was done 2 years ago. And also, it can be a past director. They did not have a stand-down year. Donna Maloney did not have a stand-down year. So I'm just saying that there's consecutive years role for them, but there are exceptions. There's also, as far as for the governing board directors, years where we don't have enough people to run. So say we have 3, we always have 3 open positions. We don't get enough people. There's no election. They move on, they're just put on the board. And then we have an open position. So then we have, again, the same thing ensues, and the sitting president goes to the pool. And the same thing ensues over and over and over. So the thing here is we're talking about a community of 28,000 people, and we have trouble year after year finding. Last year this year election was a very unusual situation. We had 8 people run. It was so exciting. In past years, we've had 2 people repeatedly run for 3 positions, and out of 28,000 residents. So it's so for the standing committees to get in the last few years enough people to would overfill the committees. I see nothing wrong with this and having a stand-down year. To serve 3 years consecutive on a standing committee and have a stand-down year. Just my opinion. Again, I don't vote unless there's a tie, so that's just my opinion.
May I?
Director Rhodes.
I'd actually like to refocus here. I would like to refocus back onto the item that initiated the discussion. And just to recap it, is the policy that we're proposing will permit a chairman to appoint someone on a committee 3 consecutive years, and then they can't be on that committee again. Now, the undertone to that is that that person, if they applied for and were selected for another committee, could serve. So they could serve 4 consecutive years, but not on the same committee. That's, I think, the issue is at stake. We're talking in circles about everything else. We need to refocus on this one particular policy. I support this, okay? And I'm not going to go into if I do or don't support everything else that was said. But right now, we're looking at, we'll permit one person to be appointed by a chairman, and that could be 3 different chairmen too. It could be 3 different chairmen. That person could be appointed 3 consecutive times, and let's pretend it's the Budget and Finance Committee. Christine and I both know that is the best committee. So that's the one we... I disagree with your objection. So, and in this case, I've served it too, and Christine will serve next year. And so she'll have to make a determination. So I want to come back to what's on the table right now, and that's
Thank you.
And that's
Thank you, Director Rhodes.
Thank you.
Director Hurley, did you have a comment before we?
I just have a real-world example. 3 years ago, I was appointed to the board to fill a vacancy, okay? I had the golf committee. I had a lady on my golf committee who was very involved with the golf community, okay? The 3 years that I had the golf committee, she was on that committee. When Harry Standenbein took over that committee, he kept her on because of the good advice that she was able to provide because of her knowledge of what goes on here in the Gulf. That's a real world example. If this was to pass, Harry would not have been allowed to bring her onto that committee, and that's not right.
Thank you. Are we, right? Oh, we'll do two more, and then I'm going to allow Jack to.
I just want to make sure that we all understand that we have residents out there that want to serve. And when you have given 3 years to a committee, it's time to pass the torch to someone else. And then they can go to another committee. We're not saying that they can only go on that one committee. They can go to another committee, Tim. So, and just like Lynn Callis said, it's good for people to go on one committee and then another committee so they can understand the works of Sun City West.
Director Novello.
That was going, I think what I'd like to encourage us to do is similar. I think we can start talking now about consensus. Consensus does not imply that we need to be unanimous. I think we'll have some differences of opinion here, but that was going to be my suggestion to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, Christine, since you were the one that started the ball rolling.
I started this ball rolling.
What would you like to change to read?
I actually would like to express support for this as is. I've expressed, I'd like to see this go forward. I'd like to see us add more. I'd like to see us continue this discussion, both. But what we're trying to do, as Director Hammond has said, we're encouraging more residents to participate. So I think this takes a step, as is. Version 5 takes a step in the correct direction. I would be willing to support this from a consensus standpoint, and just know that next year, I hope that we'll see more in the way of change on this as we see this adopted. That's my view. It is a yes. Are we voting or just stating consensus?
It's no vote, just
No vote.
consensus.
So my consensus is I support this as written.
Thank you. It's just consensus, but if Director Leary, you're good with that? Okay, so if we're going to go down the line then, and it's a yes will be for consensus to move it forward the way it is with no changes to it. So for the whole discussion, we're coming back full circle to leave it just the way it is? Okay.
From a practical standpoint, I would like to see us have something in place as we select our new committees. So yes, from me.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Director
Yes.
Hammond. Thank you.
Yes.
Director Schleimer?
I think it's a good start. I'll say yes.
Thank you. Director Rhodes?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Hurley?
No. And starting a policy with the thought that we'll change it next year is very bad. It's very bad policy, setting policy. And I will bring up my objections when we vote on it at the general meeting.
Thank you. So by consensus of 7 to 1, this will move forward to the governing board for a vote. Thank you, directors. Okay, so give me 1 second. I need to drink water. So moving on to 3.04, this line item is going to be postponed to the September workshop as it requires further attention. I'm going to presume that incoming President Leary is going to work on this.
Evidently.
As I'm going to pass that to him. So they can work on that throughout the summer. With that, we are going to move into board comments. I'm going to start with Director Novello.
Next Thursday, it's Thursday the 20th, we have our full member meeting. I look forward to seeing everybody. Wide participation there to hear from our operating team and to hear from the governing board. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hammond, no comments? Director Piaskowski? Oh, great. Director Liu? Okay. Director Schlemmer?
No comment.
I'll save mine for next week also.
Oh, I'm so excited, I can hardly wait. Ken, do you have any comments? No, okay. I too really don't have anything. Do we have any audience comments? No, Lynn.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. I'm just wondering about the meeting on the 20th. On the itinerary today, it says that it is here on the 20th. Is it not at Palm Ridge?
It is at Palm Ridge. Yeah, I was going to make the announcement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely at Palm Ridge, and we hope to see everybody there. It's at 9 a.m. at Palm Ridge. And that is our, not only, it'll be the year-end meeting, and with the wonderful presentation by our interim GM and staff, and followed by the governing board meeting as well. And we look forward to seeing everybody there. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming.